Tuesday, so
I'll touch it.
don't touch a thing.
Don't step in the bucket.
Yeah, technology.
I gave my first college lecture via Zoom.
The live stream is going
at
now.
Springfield College. It went remarkably well. Oh.
I'll sit for a second, but make sure you watch your step. Make sure you
Good, you?
Bud, you want me to move back?
No, we're fine once you guys are done. Mike, you want to sit up here then?
put your mask down if people can hear you. Move over from Tim or whatever.
How you doing, Tim?
Hello, y'all.
Hi, Tim. I guess Ann's on the telephone. Is that correct, Ann?
I think she should be on Zoom.
She is on. She's muted right now.
Hi, yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry, I'm driving.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Present, we have Tim Petrikis zooming in. Tim Keeney here present, both selectmen. Mike Marinaccio also present. Brian Wissaker zooming in. Dr. Paul Salva and Dave Marty present, and also Ann Canoyer via telephone. So I guess the first item on the agenda is the long-term recovery committee presentation, and I will turn the computer around to you gentlemen. Okay, Paul.
Thank you. The Long-Term Recovery Committee was created in June 2020 to assess how town services were holding up under the COVID pandemic. We have had many meetings over the course of time in person and more recently in Zoom. There are several areas that are of importance. The two that are at the top of the list at the moment are, number one, was effective communications with the public, and number two, assessing in a quantitative manner how town personnel are holding up with this under this stressful situation, with a particular emphasis on our fire and EMS service. The first topic, the communication piece, has been addressed by the Selectmen already by initiating the Everbridge system and also using the Summers Connect magazine mailings to just get more information out to people more consistently. The second part, I was charged by the committee to do some basically literature searching and get a sense of where everything is as far as this goes. It's been an interesting experience for our particular town. The fire EMS service has had a 30% increase in calls year over year. It also faced some interesting issues that most other towns did not, in that they had to service the prisons, and that added a little strain to the situation, more than they already do. The other thing we found was that a significant percentage of our fire EMS service are volunteers, and some of them had to step aside early on, and then subsequently because of their own pre-existing health issues, putting a greater stress on the service. The question that I posed is, do we know how well folks are holding up? One, for their own sake, and the other is for the sake of the service. And did some literature searching about this, and this is not this is a very, very widespread issue of concern, area of concern nationally. I came up with some references showing that a significant percentage, actually a simple majority of fire EMS people are under showing multiple signs of stress that is getting beyond management, personal home management. The one study I have here is by Karpa, that's reference number 3. That's actually a review article of 55 other studies. So I think the breadth of the review here is pretty good. and it's consistently consistent, pointing in one direction. I also found some documents put out by FEMA, and they are dated April 25th of 2020, so they're rather pertinent to the COVID situation, and their enclosures letters A, B, and C that I've included in the email packets and as well as the hard copy packets. How they address burnout for the personnel themselves. Also, the second one is for burnout for the families of EMS. And then lastly is a system one about how the program directors, what they can do to mitigate stress and absenteeism so that they can keep all the balls in the air, so to speak. This whole business of stress management. I've talked to a lot of people, and they're going like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, this has actually been a field that's been around for well over 40 years. So this is not new ground. It's certainly new ground for us, but this field is rather mature in terms of what to look for, how to look for it. So I just want to make sure we understand this. We're not breaking new ground here. The thing that we need, that I thought about, was there's two things we need to work on. One is to protect the protectors, because if we don't have them, we're in a pickle. And two, the whole thing of, in the business world, they call it people, process, and product. We already assess the processes all the time. The product is being able to provide a good service. The third part of that is the people who have to implement these things. And without them, nothing works. You have to have all three components in place, or it's 3 or 0 is what happens. The recommendation was that have all town employees, and I said this should be exclusive of the school system. We're not dealing with the school system. And the volunteers, more importantly, the volunteers, they take an accepted, standardized test that assesses their mental well-being. I'm getting ahead of myself, but there's a whole host of these tests that are available. This is being recommended on our part, the LTRC's part, on humanitarian grounds and good governance grounds. Protect them to protect ourselves.
Are these tests mandatory?
Well, we're getting into that.
Okay.
That's coming down the list. It should not be viewed by anybody as being a punitive thing, that we're not looking to pick anybody out.
Right.
We're not suspicious of someone that we're going to try to hang them out to dry. That's not the case at all. We have no data to support those, so we can't go down that road. We feel it should be done for the benefit of the individuals and the maintenance of town service. I came up with 5 options that have been vetted through our committee, and they range all the way from mandatory assessment these are done by third party, so it's not going to be done by an in-house person. It's a third party setup for everyone now to get a 0 data point, and then at some regular interval, therefore, to get a trend analysis for the individual and for the system. 1 copy would stay with the person, the individual person, and 1 copy would go. The company would produce an aggregate analysis so that our fire EMS people would have a clue as to how many people are feeling this. Not the individuals, but just going to get an aggregate percentage of where does the department stand as a total. That's at the far end of the spectrum in terms of really, really drilling down to get data.
Just on that particular recommendation, so 1 copy goes to the person, you said 1 copy goes. The people who do the survey combine the data, collate the data, and give it to either Bud or the fire EMS person. So in other words, it doesn't identify the
correct. Yeah, de-identified, anonymous. Yeah, no names, no addresses, no gender, no nothing on it.
Yes.
Completely de-identified, anonymous, but an aggregate. So the chiefs, the various chiefs know.
Just want to get that
clarified. Yeah, exactly. Anonymous, de-identified, done by a third party. Then we go down. The exact same thing, only information stays with the individual, and the greater powers that be do not get an aggregate. Next is mandatory assessment for the volunteers, and optional for the unionized staff if they don't want to be involved. We're not going to fight that. 4th option, a completely optional assessment for those who step up and would be interested in doing it. And the 5th option is just keep doing what we're doing, which right now, as best as I can surmise, is that there are assistance programs in place, but people have to come up and specifically ask for the assistance.
Correct.
In my reading, as far as this goes, that's been looked. People did studies about. There's studies about all this stuff, as you can imagine. And it was interesting. Even in places that were identified, went through the whole shebang, the mandatory business. They found of the people that were clearly showing signs of needing help, 40% denied that they need help. 20 to 25% did not know the signs and strains of that they're actually showing issues. They didn't know what they were doing was a problem. Their behaviors were concerning, and 20% knew but were afraid that it was going to affect their careers.
Bingo.
So, Paul, this is Tim. I've got a question for you, if you can.
Yes.
Is this anonymous or voluntary?
Has to be voluntary.
Well, that's two separate questions. Anonymous, regardless.
Yep.
Then the question whether it should be voluntary or non-voluntary.
Well,
I'm going to get into that.
How do we deliver services if it's anonymous? How do you identify the folks most likely in need?
Well, that's a good question.
So here's my concern. There's this process that we have as we're employing people where I work of a predictive index, right? Predictive index is this profile that says whether or not the person should be successful in the role that we're aligning them for.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to use that as hiring criteria. It's more important that we use it as criteria to help coach that person to success. My fear is that people who are not trained use that information to either make a hire or not hire decision here at work. I want to make sure we don't create an environment in our municipal staff that causes them to question the need for this or what our ultimate goal is. Ultimate goal is good, solid mental health, but how do we identify how to get best services to people most in need if it's truly anonymous?
And that's a very good question, and that's kind of like that's a major stumbling block. To get people to buy in, it needs to be anonymous, but then to get people to buy into the next level, there has to be a de-identification, and that's the tricky part about where people now have to realize that okay, I do need to step up and ask for help. This is just, as I said, being an encouraging process. I personally have gone through one of these things. Actually, we go through these every 6 months through the medical staff at Bay State, and it's I'm you know me well enough. I'm kind of like I've got serious denial titers, but it was actually very enlightening, and it made me rethink a lot of the stuff that how I was approaching issues or how I was reacting to issues. Like so, there is a self-help component in this as well. But at the end of the day, you to use the colloquialism, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't force them to drink.
So I think the employee needs to understand why it's in that employee's best interest to use the information they have and to consider following up on it at a later date.
Yeah.
But at least you got the basic groundwork covered. You got a benchmark that can be used to identify a potential issue in the future.
Yeah, and that's exactly correct. And then that's the point behind suggesting that the anonymous, de-identified data gets put in aggregate, so the department heads know where they stand. So, and that's up to them to how they wish to deal with it. There's no calling anybody out in an open meeting about this, but to give the information about what's going on. And I've been at meetings like that where people have said, we got the surveys back, and here is what the numbers are showing us. And it's like I said, for those willing to listen, it's been eye-opening. That 50% of the population of people are dealing with this particular issue. Well, then now, if you're one of those people, you're not alone. It's not just me that's going over the edge here, or whatever, the little sign of stress. This is getting to be a common problem. And then how does the system in general deal with that? And this is a gigantic issue in the healthcare situation because there's massive frustrations that are burning people out left, right, and center.
Yeah, and I would agree. And it isn't so much going over the edge. It's the stresses that everybody's feeling between home and work and environment that challenges us all to do what we got to do. And I want to make sure that should we go down this route that is positioned as a way to ensure that we're creating a healthy environment for the workers, healthy environment for the people who interact with the workers, in an inclusive environment at Town Hall. that's a hard thing to deliver.
Mhm.
It's a hard thing to deliver. So I'm curious what options we have to make sure that gets delivered well.
And just to add on to that, I
Yeah.
think one of the key elements here is this issue of confidentiality and the sort of implicit distrust that an employee has with headquarters saying, "Don't worry about it; it's confidential." How do you assure the employee that this is indeed confidential and is no way can that issue be breached?
Good question.
That's a great question.
That's where you use the third party, contracted third party, and you can. There's a point at which you can only say what you're going to do so many times before people either believe you or don't. And there's going to be some folks who say, "Okay, yep, fine," and there's going to be you could show them in spades, exactly, and then there's a point at which there's just some folks that are not going to buy it no matter how you serve it up. But that shouldn't prevent us from trying. The one or that's some percentage, 15% of the population who has just inherent distrust shouldn't blow it up for the other 85.
That's a good point.
Can I make a few comments?
Please.
By the way, I'm going to turn the computer on so Tim can see me. I fully support this. We're seeing the incidences here in Summers in terms of depression, isolation, domestic abuse, abusing of drugs, etc. So it's a problem associated with stress. So my concern when I saw all this, which I appreciate your efforts by the Long-Term Recovery Committee and you in particular, Paul, in terms of the medical opinion, was the whole term mandatory, okay? So I've reached out to two people. I've reached out to the Lexington group that's we use for employee assistance, as well as our labor attorney, Pat McHale, for their input regarding a mandatory assessment for our employees that may be effective with stress. And here's what they said. Lexington is hesitant to mandatory assessment because it does not go over well with the employees. It makes the employee feel threatened, worried, and singled out, concerned about the job. You've already addressed that. They did recommend, however, group training sessions, which I think you're talking about here, where the group sessions don't target anyone in particular and put them on a spot. If an employee feels a need for individual counseling, they can reach out privately to the Lexington group for one-on-one sessions with a certified therapist, which can be scheduled within a week. So I reached out to our labor attorney and basically bounced these recommendations off him, and this is what he said. Offering the training rather than mandating assessments is the way they recommend to go. Stress and other types of mental assessments are considered medical examinations, which an employer cannot require under the ADA, American Association with Disability, absent business necessity. Further, the Lexington group will not get involved unless the employee voluntarily consents to the receipt of their services. By offering the training, you will expose the employees to the services that are available to them, and the Lexington will have a place to go if they feel they will benefit from them. So, again, I support this. My concern is that we don't invade somebody's privacy rights, okay? My other concern also is that I'm very familiar with sampling. How big's the sample going to be? How effective is it going to be? And if people say, I'm not going to sign up for it, then how reliable is it? Okay, those are my initial comments. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, that's what see. Option number 4 of the 5 options I presented was completely optional assessment for those interested. No mandatory anything.
So,
and I wanted to give you a spectrum of the possibilities. The one end here and the other end, just keep doing what you're doing. So, status quo versus.
Yeah, I don't think.
And I'm not married to this.
But that option that the Lexington group talked about, offering a service to the individual, doesn't capture the people that have no idea that they've got a problem.
The question is, how do you reach them? Okay.
That one way to reach them is to give them an anonymous survey that they can have. It's part of their own identity, part of who they are, what's happening.
By the way, I'm all in favor of this. The
I-
question is, how do you maintain the
Yeah, that's the how.
confidentiality?
The how is the
And
problem.
how do you communicate that?
Yes.
Because the first person is going to say, wait a minute, I don't have a problem.
Right.
Or if I do have a problem, I'm
Yeah.
certainly not going to advertise it.
Exactly.
Because
That's
my
exactly
job
right.
may be at risk or my fellow colleagues will reject
People
me.
look at me differently.
Right.
I'll now be the weak link.
Correct.
As Paul says, this is a mature field, and there are many different parts of government and government services right now that are thinking along these very lines. One good example is the national response to major forest fires. There was a story on NPR a couple of weeks ago that talked about how these individuals are mostly type A people. They go in there expecting to put the fire out. They can't put the fire out. They come from all over the country as well. And then what happens to them after the fact? And that there's a real need to follow up with these individuals and a responsibility. And I think that's another issue that I think needs to be considered is the responsibility part of it as far as town government goes.
So I guess my question still is, again, I'm all in favor of this. How we communicate the message, how do we get people to buy into it, knowing in effect it's going to be confidential, it'll be used for the common good. Otherwise, the data is not going to be any good.
I agree. But whoops, somebody's
Sorry,
talking.
Tim.
Can I say,
Just as a perspective from the labor attorney, can we require training, but then leave the assessment optional? Is that one of the options that we have?
I don't know. I don't think so, but I will reach out to him on that point. I don't know if you can require anybody under the labor laws. That's my concern.
No, I think we can probably require training for anything we want, from operating a fire hydrant to participating.
I agree.
In,
Right.
I mean, if we brought this group in to do training on what signs to look for, and then an outcome of the training is you can, if you want, optionally grab this assessment, it would at least get the awareness out that if somebody's feeling like they might be under those signs of stress, at least we've given them a way to go. I'm curious to know, can we require all employees to attend training, and whether that's virtual, where they log into a virtual training environment somehow, or we bring them into town hall and do the training? What options are out there? But if we require training with the outcome being the option to take the assessment, would that give us a way to reach out to people and say we're here to support it?
I think that's very much part of the Lexington Group's proposal as well.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and reach out and get an opinion on that, Tim. That's a good point. Again, how they define training.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the key. Maybe we can thread the needle here, but I'll check it and let you know.
No, if part of the deal is I'm reading down through the list here, I reached out to people I've just known in different towns, primarily the parents of my patients who come in, who I talk with them to find out that they're fire EMS people. And just over the past 3 to 6 months that we've been trying to put this together, and you can see there, Vernon, Enfield, East Windsor, East Long Meadow, Springfield, West Springfield, and corrections officers in both states and state police in both states. There's nothing prospective in place for any of them. None of them. So now the next statement is down now. The Connecticut State Legislature in the last session, the July special session, did put in mandatory assessing now
For police.
For police.
Right.
For police. 20% per year get tested. So someone would get tested every 5 or assessed every 5 years. So there's creep there. There's definitely a need there. When I spoke to these different folks in these different towns, it was tough listening to them talk about this stuff.
It's a lot easier when it's mandated by the state. At this stage of the game, we have to get the cooperation.
Yeah.
I just like to follow up on something Paul said, because you mentioned a couple of towns there that at our last meeting we talked about this, Bud, briefly. There was interest expressed by you, but you also made that contingent upon funding being available,
Yeah.
possibly through the Hartford Foundation. And as I mentioned at that point, that one of the things that our committee discussed was the possibility of other towns being involved, other similarly situated towns. And then your question was, well, who's going to do that? And there was no answer. On my own, I went ahead and contacted First Selectman Melissa Mack in Suffield, who is very interested. In fact, you would have been on the call today, except for the fact that she's got a personal issue with one of her kids at school. East Windsor, Jason Bauza is extremely interested and is definitely going to do something. He's very interested in the possibility of maybe Paul and myself speaking with he and his police chief. He wants to set up a Zoom meeting to do that, to follow up, and he's definitely going to be moving in this direction. Chris Kervick is from Windsor Locks, is very interested. And as is Lori Spielman from Ellington.
Yes,
Very
we are,
interested.
Tim.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm just telling you,
Yeah.
though, that the whole idea is if you can get other communities to operate in concert or other types, they can choose whatever they want to do, but at least they're involved, at least they're interested. It also gives you more input as to what other towns are considering.
And it could help with the cost.
Yeah. We feel pretty we're going to get the 100K from Hartford, but it'll be 50,000 initially, and then the second year is 50,000. But that's one of the top priorities, mental health. So I think we can qualify for that.
Well, the key here is that we've got another 4 towns besides Summers that
Right.
are very interested, and you could definitely put together a coalition of interested towns, all in the greater Hartford area.
So the question is, how do we go about this? How do we go about the message? How do we go about communicating this message? How do we get PR into it? I think now's the time, on the basis of what's been happening for the past year.
Yeah. Now, you're talking about the mandating business, everybody, and I get that's a hot button. But right now with the fire EMS, they have to take mandatory physical exams every year.
Right.
And that's part of the deal. And taking from my own experience, I've put here the 3 vital organ systems in the body are the heart, the brain, and the kidneys. Well, their heart and their kidneys are being evaluated now yearly by physical exams and lab work, but the brain's being left out of the equation. And you got to have all 3 to function. So I said to Tim Patrick, it's not. It is a bit of a stretch, but it's not as big a stretch in terms of the mandating business. And I'm not pushing the mandating business, please. But part of it is, if we're already doing this, and and then the fire guys and the EMS guys, they have mandatory procedure drills that they have to do all the time. It's amazing the stuff that they have to do, or you don't get to ride the bus. So there's a lot of that already built into the system now. This would be this would be yet another add-on. And I go, there's mission creep, and I get that. But still, if your system goes to pieces, we've got a big problem.
Yeah, I think it has to be pitched in such a way that it benefits everybody, the community, the organization, and specifically the individual.
And that's where your third party comes in.
Yeah.
The expert that has more credibility than people from this building.
Yeah, and they have some separation. And as I put in,
I can appreciate that perspective, Paul, but I just get a little sensitive to mandates on certain things with employees because of trust issues with leadership. And that's at work, that's at town hall. We pay people $300 into their HRA to get an annual physical if we want healthy employees at work, not here at town hall. And we have employees that don't take advantage of that because they don't want the doctors to tell anybody that they've got something wrong with them if they can protect their health. That's not our goal. Our goal is to have healthy employees. In a municipal environment, requiring people to take an assessment that has any kind of tie to mental stability could be threatening. I'm just suggesting that making them aware that we have it available and letting them opt into the assessment would be a good way to at least take a half step forward to say we are here to support all the stuff you're challenged with. Because I get it. It's not good.
Yeah.
We're working in a tough environment. We got to make sure that everybody knows that we're doing our best to put resources out there, but ultimately, they got to be the one to take the step to say, "Yep, I want to go the next."
I agree. That's where the whole.
Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
Yes.
Sorry, Annie.
I'm trying to talk for the last half hour.
Yeah, no worries. I feel that because I've worked in a hazardous duty environment for so long, I can speak firsthand about how you can work in that environment for so many years and not even know
Yeah.
that you're feeling stress, because it just becomes the norm, and you're operating at such a high level that you don't even recognize it to be stress. It is the norm. So I think we really need to start first at dialing it back to just education. And there is nothing that should preclude a town municipality from requiring annual training. And that would be something where you could require not just first responders and your EMS. This could be just a requirement. I don't know what your town structure is in terms of annual training, but I would imagine that everybody has to go through diversity and sexual harassment and all of those normal ones that most municipalities, I would imagine, have to go through. But this could just be another one where you have this mandatory training about just mental health and stress, what stress is, what it identifies, how it presents, because people don't really know it. And then, maybe at the end of this online training, you could have an optional survey or assessment that people could do if they so chose, but it would be something that it doesn't get saved, it doesn't, it's just something that they could say, okay, well, if you have these 10 things, then you have some serious, issues with stress related, depression or anxiety, all of those things, and it's for their own benefit, right? So at least they've learned what it is, and they understand that what they have been experiencing is not normal, and that they should be concerned about what they're experiencing.
And they might also receive advice as to what are ways of dealing with that stress.
Yeah.
That could be helpful to the individual.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that what Bud said he was going to check with the labor attorney to see if we could do? I thought we agreed that would be a good first
Yeah,
step.
I will follow up on that. I think this...
I was just concurring with that and suggesting that I would be far pressed to think that a municipality couldn't require training.
I think we can require training. I just don't think we can require an assessment. I'm all in favor of requiring training. Absolutely.
And I think that a fair meet in the middle would definitely be just like an optional self-assessment at the end. Because if you make it mandatory, oftentimes you will just find people that will lie, or they won't take it at all, So you don't want that, because certainly this is just really about helping them. And I would suggest that everybody's managing stress right now, and that it's not really exclusive to first responders.
No.
Everyone is having their own difficulties with this crisis in particular, but just life in general. Managing home life and work life and everything else that goes along with it is something that everybody should be able to be afforded the opportunity to learn more about.
Tim, I think your point's well taken about the training. This may be for a way to us open the door here, and I'll get an opinion from the attorney, and I'll let you know. But maybe that's at the tail end of any training. And I think if it's presented well, I think people see the benefit of it. I also compliment Paul Salva, because I had a similar experience in my business life where I had an anonymous survey that I filled out, and it was extremely revealing to me. It's almost like you think the message you're sending is not the message you're receiving. So I think if it's couched that way, I think we get some good response. The concern that I have is the 40% that you mentioned that don't think they have a problem.
Right. Well, and
Okay?
we've talked about the Superman complex.
Right.
The very services the fire EMS service that attracts that personality type.
Get the
It
type
does.
A people doing the work.
And so,
They don't
but
want to
that
show
doesn't mean we
interest.
shouldn't try.
I agree.
That's all.
That's right.
So you've been silent here, Dave. You have any comments?
Yeah, I do have a comment. As part of the whole training piece, I'm assuming a professional group like the Lexington group will be hosting or doing the training.
Yeah, well, we'll use them.
Is
Yes.
that you build awareness that the whole EAP program is part of your benefits package, and it's available to you as an employee. And there's a lot of people that are probably not even aware of that.
The one question I have is, what about our volunteer staff?
Then they have to pay extra for that.
Okay, because I mean, they should be part of the deal as well.
Yeah, exactly. They're kind of hanging out there with no coverage
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah. I didn't interrupt David, but I mean, I could have been
point.
doing but
Yep.
Okay, I think
Thank you.
we're pretty much in agreement that this is a problem. I support that. The question is how we go about getting the message out there. How do we make it so we get enough response in terms of the population for the data to be meaningful? In the meantime, I'll check with our labor attorney to see whether or not we can use the training aspect as a way to kind of get this thing in. But I think it goes back to the educational aspect. You can benefit from it. The community can benefit from it. Your family can benefit from it.
The Lexington group might have some,
Yeah, I have that.
shed some light on that
Yeah.
as well.
Right.
cool. Well, thank you, gentlemen, very much. And Kim for putting this all together.
Yeah,
And
thank you,
Dan.
Paul, and I appreciate your input here. I mean, it's obviously an issue. I see it here in the community because of the police reports and the responses from the fire. It's a legitimate issue. See it in the senior center. Again, the isolation, the frustration, the anger. Okay, it's an issue.
Thank you very much for giving us this time to present.
Thank you, Paul.
Live and be well, man.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Michael.
Here, Paul. I'm gonna bug out.
Okay, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you for putting this at the beginning of the program today, too. I think that-
Yeah, I know
Thank you very
everybody's
much.
got the time situation.
Love you all, but time to go home.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
See you guys.
Yeah.
Take care.
Tim and Tim, what I'll do is I'll reach out to Pat McHale and I'll send you guys a note. And everybody else associated with the group will know his opinion, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, let's not let this go too long though, but if you could get it on the agenda in a couple of weeks so we can.
No, in fact, I'll do it first thing next week. Tim, I'll reach out. This is hot on the table, so I'll respond.
No, it's an important topic. I just don't want it to
No,
No,
the life of its own.
it shouldn't.
and I'll make that commitment, and I'll follow up on that right away, okay?
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the fiscal year 2022 budget, discussion and possible vote. Both you gentlemen received the final version of the proposed fiscal 2022 budget. Are there any changes, corrections, additions in preparation for our submittal to the Board of Finance on Tuesday, March 16th? Before we
For the
open for...
purposes of discussion, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the budget as submitted.
I'll second that.
Okay. Before we vote, I'd like to make a few comments.
So I've got some amendments, actually, proposed.
Okay,
as well.
before we get into that, I'd like to make a few comments. I feel it's a very tight and responsible budget with a minimal increase of 1.25% over last year's budget. There are no cuts in service, with the proposed budget reflecting savings due to our reorganization efforts in land use and the addition of another police officer in our third shift, thus improving our response time and our safety. Services are expanding in social services based upon need, and we continue to expand our offerings in recreation and the senior center, all covered in this budget. Department of Public Works budget increase is driven by the deficits at the transfer station, which are partially offset by reductions in other categories. I'd like to publicly thank and acknowledge the hard work put in by all our directors, specifically our Chief Financial Officer, Mike Marinaccio, and Brian Wissinger, in crafting a responsible budget that addresses the needs of our community. So we're open for discussion before we vote in terms of the acceptance of the budget. Tim, you want to make some
Thank you,
comments?
Bud. Yes. As I recall, when we discussed the budget for Veterans Affairs Office, we recommended several changes to it, one of which was not recognized in what you presented here. They requested, Veterans Office requested and by the way, this is their first time they've ever produced a budget. And it was thought that it was a little bit overreaching with regards to what their responsibilities are. One of the things they requested was $500 for supplies. And the way the discussion went at the meeting when we talked about this was that you, Bud, said, gee, they're part of my organization
Part of the budget.
in town hall,
Yeah.
and we can take care of that. They need supplies, we got them. So they don't need a separate budget for supplies. Did you concur with that, Bud?
I do. In fact, we've taken their request and put it under the First Selectmen's budget.
Right.
And anything associated with the American Legion, as we discussed, they will come to us separately, and then we will approve their payment for flags on Main Street or medallions on the cemetery, etc.
Right.
The
Or, of
$500.
course, American Legion Post 101
Yeah.
is the primary sponsor for those activities.
That $500, Brian, maybe you could comment, it may be for miscellaneous over and above what we have in the First Selectmen's budget.
And there's $2,500 in the First Selectmen's supplies line. So, I mean, I do see the redundancy that Tim is talking about by adding another $500 supply line, specifically for veterans. Yeah, you get into these, well, we might need it, and then it turns into a, well, since we have it, we're going to spend it kind of thing.
And it also gets into sort of a budget creep. Once you put it in there, it's going to be in there every year.
Yeah, I have no problem.
I'm not necessarily sure we need it.
Okay. I have no problem taking that out because I think
Great.
what we have is
Appreciate
sufficient
that.
for that. So
I
we'll
had-
make that adjustment.
I had another point as well.
Tim Patrikas, are you okay with that change as well?
I am going to amend my motion after Mr. Keeney is done with his concerns, so I'm going to reserve
Okay.
that motion until we're done, so we can just make one modification.
Perfect.
Brian, thanks.
Great. Also, as you may recall, when the registrar, when Dave McCaffrey presented the registrar's budget, he put in there $1,800 for a planned contingency potential election for the Republican Town Committee membership, based on the fact that a couple of years ago there was such a special election and he didn't have the money for it. Therefore, he wanted to put it in his budget to be there if he needed it. And the discussion went sort of like, you really don't need that. And if you do, you could ask for it at a later date.
Yeah, I
That was
agree.
$1,800. And associated with that would probably, I talked to Brian Wissinger about this beforehand, there might also be a couple $100 of programming associated funds that he put in the programming budget that is also part of his budget presentation. So that if we took $2,000 out of his proposed budget, I think it would be more in line with what his needs truly are.
There are no special elections forecasted this year.
None.
So your point's well taken. Again,
Yeah.
I've had discussions with both Sherry and with David McCaffrey, and I've assured them that their needs will be met through the First Selectmen's budget,
Right.
whether it's for supplies or
This is the
telephone.
this is the registrar's
Yeah.
budget request. Just had to be the same guy that made the
Yeah, I'm sorry,
request.
you're right about that.
A little bit confusing. Yeah, I understand. And I talked to Brian about this earlier, and those figures I think are pretty accurate with regards to what was requested, so that the recommendation would be, or the proposal would be, that we eliminate $2,000 from the registrar's budget request.
Okay. Any additional comments, gentlemen, regarding the budget? Or
But I'd like
changes?
to amend my motion to adopt the budget as presented with two corrections: a reduction in supplies for the Veterans Department of $500, reduction of $2,000 from the Board of Registrars, and would encourage you that if you do have those discussions with those individuals, that the budget recommendation we get from the Finance Office reflect those discussions in your recommendations.
So moved. Okay.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor of the budget with the changes recommended?
Aye.
Let's
Aye.
make sure that we're all agreeing to the same number.
Yes, $2,000,
Let me get you
$1,800.
because we should probably state the actual dollar amount too. So let me get
So
the.
I'm looking at $35,684,807 total.
Yeah, the only part you should be focused on, Tim, is the town line item.
Yeah.
Okay.
The whole budget, 'cause they come in pieces, obviously.
So the total would be reduced by $2,005.
I've got $8,417,377.
Correct. My amended motion would be for that amount, $8,417,877 for the town portion of the municipal.
377.
I'm sorry, 377. Thank you.
$8,377,977, correct?
No,
8,417,377
Yeah.
$377.
Okay.
yes, sir, correct.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, this will be presented, as I mentioned, in March
March the 16th.
the 16th. Okay? And thanks to everybody for their involvement. It was a tedious process, but I think it's a good budget.
Absolutely.
And small increase in services, no decrease in terms of services. We still have issues in terms of things like transfer station, but that's a
No,
separate
I
issue.
appreciate the extra work from Mike's office for the clarity that we get this year with the detail. That was an improvement over last year, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
I agree also. All right, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is the approval of sale of town property at 750 Hall Hill. I will need the board's approval for the sale of this property at 750 Hall Hill Road and send it to the planning committee on March the
How
11th.
about the discussion before we get to approval there, bud?
Yeah, okay. Send it to the planning committee for their recommendation. We would then like to schedule a public hearing and a town meeting to solicit their input and vote to adopt a resolution authorizing the sale and for me to execute any documents necessary. We'll provide notice for 14 days prior to the town meeting. Just as a note, this property's been on our books since 2000. It was, I guess, used by the Gold House at 750 Hall Hill Road. We've had no requirement. We have no request for sale. I guess the only people who would be interested in it would be the abutters. So that's why Hillsdale has approached us.
And I understand they've offered $30,000. Is that
That's correct. We had it appraised, and I think it's a very fair price. The property can't be built on. The northern section is right up against the Massachusetts town line.
And
So I think they just want it as an integral part of that total property up there.
it's a little bit over an acre. Is that right?
I'm sorry, Tim. Tim?
What is our process for disposal of town assets? I know that, like, when we sell a fire truck, we do a public notice and we accept bids. What's the deal here? What if someone else is interested in this property now that there's a $30,000 offer on it?
Well,
What's
I checked with our attorney. He said there is no process for that in terms of sealed bids. This property, I guess, has been aware. People have been aware of it. I guess if they were interested, they could have bid on it. Mike, you have any comments on that?
Usually an abutter is granted or asked if they're interested. The only abutter is the state of Massachusetts, East Long Meadow, and I believe it is also all abutted totally by the Hillsdale property itself. And so they would be the abutter essentially requesting the sale of that property. So
That's correct. I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the sale of property, 750 Hall Hill, is that what it's called?
That's correct.
Can we get a legal opinion on what an abutter is? Because I know, like, with zoning changes, it's the abutter and the abutter to the abutter. I don't know what the status is of the abutter who might be across the street. And I'm concerned we're disposing of a public asset without the public having a chance to bid on it.
Across the street is in the state of Massachusetts.
Across Hall Hill Road?
but tell me
No,
what you spoke
this
to
is
Carl
not on
about.
Hall Hill Road, is it?
This is
It's on Hall Hill Road.
It is on
that's
Hall
correct.
Hill, okay.
But you spoke to
Okay,
Carl.
so this last night I drove up Hall Hill Road across the street was still Connecticut, but I might be wrong.
No, it is across the street, but I don't consider that an abutting property per our zoning.
Well,
law.
I'm just asking for a legal opinion on what an abutter is. I'm not sure. So before I would support that motion, I'd want to know the definition of an abutter in the state of Connecticut as it results in realty law.
We talked to the attorney.
Yeah, I did talk with Carl about this, Tim. He said we had no issues. I didn't even bring up the term abutter, except he indicated to me that the only people that would be interested in this would be the abutter. And from what I understand from our zoning regulations, an abutter in terms of the property is adjacent to or contiguous to that particular property.
Not across the
Not
street
across
from the
the
state
street.
road.
Sure, but we all know that it was a little contentious on the transfer of the property to Hall Hill anyway, so I want to be
It's
respectful.
gotta go
of
to
the
town
citizens
meeting,
of
they
the
can
village.
Yeah.
instruct
I
their,
just find it odd that if we sell a
It's
fire
gotta be
truck, it goes out to
advertised.
public bid, and we're going to sell real estate on a Thursday evening, so.
Yeah.
this is not automatic tonight.
Tim,
We're just going to-
nobody's, the people have a chance to weigh in on this thing. It'll be presented at a town meeting, and any objections or lack of approval will be forthcoming at that point. They have a chance to vote on it.
Correct.
But it's a
So
way,
would Mr. Keeney amend the approval to move it to a town meeting for a discussion or decision on the sale, but not a motion to sell?
I think that's correct.
Yeah.
We have a signed agreement approved by the town attorney, but it's all contingent upon it being passed at the town meeting.
Correct.
So what you're doing tonight as selectmen is voting to move this to town meeting.
To planning.
planning,
First the planning.
right.
And then on to a public hearing and town meeting together.
But what's the motion again?
So the motion would be to authorize, for the selectmen, to authorize the sale of 750 Hall Hill for the price of $30,000
And forward it to the
and
planning
forward it to
commission.
planning for their review and subsequent presentation to a town committee for discussion and a decision on the sale.
And also to establish then a date for that town meeting.
Which needs to be advertised.
That's correct. And we'll advertise it. So in effect, we're going through the process, Tim, where nothing has been signed or approved until we get the input
Yeah,
from
I mean,
it.
I could support a motion to move it through that process without the words to approve a sale of.
Okay.
I don't want to approve a sale. So you guys do what you want.
Okay, we'll move it on to planning, and we'll go through the process.
Well, you don't have a second or a vote yet, but
I understand. I'm just trying to clarify. So at this stage of the game, you want to make a vote on it?
You need a second on the motion.
it will not second the motion if it has the term
It's already
sale.
been seconded.
No sale. Authorize it to pass it on to the planning.
That's not what Mr. Keeney proposed. If he wants to amend his motion, I'll consider it, but I'm not going to
Well,
second it.
what would be something that you would consider acceptable, Tim?
I guess something along a motion to move it to the town meeting, to move it through the process. I don't want to approve a sale with the
Correct.
predefined expectation that we've already agreed to sell it. I'm fine with having a town meeting.
Okay, how about approve the moving along the offer to purchase 750 Hall Hill Road for $30,000 and move that to planning and then on to town meeting for discussion and approval.
There you go, 100%. I'll support that.
Very
Yep.
good.
I'll
Okay.
second that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll remove the term sale from that, Tim. Okay?
No, I think the way that Mr. Keeney pronounced it is perfect. Just approve the purchase agreement.
Proposed purchase
Yeah. Yep.
of the
That way,
property
at least
for the
residents will
price
have to- Yeah, yep, for the price of
to be
$30,000.
moved to the town planning committee and then on to, with
You could
due
say it to
notice.
be disposed of in accordance with the town charter, because that's exactly what is going to be done, so.
That'd be perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. So I don't know if somebody wants to read that back. I think, my intent has been heard. I appreciate
Not
it.
me.
Thank you.
We'll let Tim read it
So
back.
the motion would be to acknowledge the offer to purchase 750 Hall Hill Road for $30,000 and to move such request to the planning committee for their review and then moving it to, in accordance with the town charter, moving it to the town committee for their discussion, consideration, and decision.
Yeah, that would be 14 days after it goes to planning, which is on March the 11th. So then we would we would have a town meeting scheduled for March 25th at 6 o'clock. and we will basically announce that in the paper.
Okay, we'll add those dates.
Yeah, well, you can add them at any time.
Okay,
As long as they're
Second,
advertised.
as discussed, second. Yep.
all right.
Very good.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. The next item on the agenda is the IT governance proposal, which has been forwarded to you. And I'll turn this over to Mike. This is in response to the Bloom Shapiro assessment of our current IT situation. Mike?
So I sent all of you a summary of a proposal for this. This would establish a central body in town. It's called the IT Governance Committee, and it would be empowered to recommend actions to the Board of Selectmen, who then would approve them. They have it's kind of like CIP with the Board of Finance. They have the power to recommend, but not the power to approve. But what they can do is review and scrutinize and determine the framework and the goals of where we're going with IT governance. The governance process would set the framework for decisions impacting the town's technology, strategic direction, policies, investment priorities. And the process is designed to develop a decision-making framework, which would be this group, for guiding the investments and to ensure that our overall purchase and portfolio of assets is best serving its citizens. The goal of the committee would be to ensure that IT spending decisions are clearly aligned with the selectmen, and make sure that everything is clearly articulated to the selectmen, and then the selectmen would have that added level of comfort that a committee has scrutinized and looked at and determined that what is being proposed is in alignment with where we as a town need to go. So I understand that the governance process will evolve over time. It probably will change as things are needed and technology changes, but I think it's the best framework for ongoing governance activities. So, if you have any questions on the presentation itself, I did identify and I did discuss these with Bud, First Selectman, the members who would be serving on this. I think would be two separate votes that you would have to take. The first would be to establish this committee, and the second would be to then appoint the members of the committee. So,
Yeah, from what I saw, Mike, on what you presented, it's very much in line with the recommendation that was given to us back in October by Bloom Shapiro. So I think it's fine.
thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think the town could definitely benefit from this. I do have one recommended change for your committee member makeup. One person who happens to be a resident of the town and has tremendous experience in this area, who I think the committee could benefit from, is Bill Meyer. Bill has led the Vernon Police Department's technology department for 10 years. He's been the project manager for a multi-purpose radio and dispatch communications upgrade for approximately $800,000. He's helped design, prepare bids, and implement town-wide phone system for the Board of Education, Public Safety, and Town Government. The phone system is a shared service that saves the town $200,000 annually. He's also regularly purchased computers, laptops, tablets, and other devices to support public safety, and he oversees and manages multiple application programs to support critical operations. And he's had extensive experience working with technology vendors on purchasing, bidding, repairs, and design. And I think one of the main reasons that it would be important to have him on this committee is because of his experience with shared services in the community, i.e. Board of Education, where town could definitely benefit.
Yeah, that's why I have the director of IT from Enfield on here. He also is a resident in the town of Somers, and he heads
I would
up
support
IT.
Tim on that recommendation. I thought we were going to do the committee selection next, but I would absolutely support Tim for everything he just said. I think Bill should be on the committee too. So
Thank you.
if we're going to do 2 votes, we can discuss that further. But if you want to do one, I would wholeheartedly support Tim's recommendation there for Bill.
Well, so my thinking is that would be just an extra member of the committee.
It would be an extra member. And
There's no magic number.
There's
There's numbers of people.
No, there's no magic number. You're absolutely right. And I consulted with Bud on this. I would leave it up to you gentlemen anyway to suggest whatever you want. So.
I have no problem expanding the amount of members. I guess we just want to make certain it wasn't cumbersome. But I guess the more input we have, the better off we would be.
I think it's a strong skill, a group with a lot of strong skills.
I don't see the list of committee members. Maybe I missed it, but who do we have from the Board of Selectmen on the committee?
Yeah. I am the chairman, Joe Tolosano, former selectman, current Board of Finance member, is a vice chair. He's the chief information officer of the Connecticut State Colleges and Universities. Brian Sepla, superintendent of schools, former director of educational technology for the town of Glastonbury. Mike Marinaccio, liaison, chief financial officer, former IT consultant, Deloitte & Touche, and an IT auditor director. And Paul Russell, chief technology officer for the town of Enfield. In addition, we will have input from from Tristan, our supplier, as well as for Brian Wessinger, and our manager provider, as well as Kim LaFleur.
So how many members? Can we just go over that?
So we have 5 members now. You're proposing a 6th member.
Right.
We're trying to again. We need to we need to clarify the lines between management and governance, and so this group is governance.
Right.
Management will continue to do what they're doing. They're just going to be working and interfacing with the governance committee, and actually being very integral.
I'd like to suggest, Bud, that I take your role there rather than you. As you know, I don't know that we made the best decision for the town with the hardware purchase that we had to go through this year. I don't know that all options were explored. Just in commercial work in the past couple of years, I've been exposed to the myriad different options that are out there. I'm not saying we made the wrong one. I'm just not sure we made the best one. And I think it would be beneficial for me to serve in that role and allow you to be at an arm's length from the actual vendor we choose. So I'd prefer that I sit there instead of you as the chairman from the Board of Selectmen.
I'll support that. So who would the people be then if that were the case?
The rest of the team stays the same, I think, Tim.
So, again, Brian Wissinger, the Enfield.
Brian Wissinger and Tristan as our.
Tristan would be on it.
This is the committee itself, right, as it stands right now. Brian, Kim, and Tristan would be invited to every meeting as management participants, and not part of the governance committee.
Okay. So the committee members then would be then a selectman,
a member of the Board of Finance,
a member of the Board of Finance, Joe Tolosano in this case, as vice chair, superintendent of schools, Brian Zappala, CTO, town of Enfield, Paul Russell. And CFO Mike Marinaccio.
Right.
And then also
Bill Meyer.
Bill Meyer.
Yep.
Okay. I got plenty to do, Jim. If you want to take it over, that's all right with me.
I think Kim's got much expertise in this area, and I think it'd be helpful to have him as on the board.
So it's the selectman that's going to chair it. So whoever.
Okay.
That would be you, Tim.
Yep, that'll work.
Very good.
Okay, so the procedure is we have to authorize the
Proceed.
forming of this
You
committee?
form the committee, you appoint the members, I will then notify them and then start our meeting cadence, our schedule. We were going to do it quarterly, we'll probably do it every other month or monthly at the start. Once we get the ball rolling, it'll be quarterly.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the IT Governance Committee, a committee of 6 individuals, and as proposed, it's 5 plus 1. So, but they would include the rest of the language in the proposal that was just reviewed by Mike Marinaccio.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, gentlemen, the next item is the approval of the minutes.
The next thing one is appointing the members.
I thought we
Right,
already...
right, yeah.
Because over the next, we need
Just,
a motion. I'd also like to-
Just like you do with any other committee,
Yeah.
you're appointing the members.
So I'd like to make a motion that we appoint the following members for this IT Governance Committee. They would be Tim Patrikas, who would chair it, Joe Tolosano, vice chair, Brian Zappala, Paul Russell, Mike Marinaccio as the liaison, and Bill Meyer.
Correct.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Done. Next item is minutes for approval. Gentlemen both received these and from this February the 4th. And
For the purpose of the discussion, I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes of February 4th as presented.
okay. Any changes? Tim?
I
None from
don't
me.
have any changes.
Okay. All in favor of
I'll
that?
second it.
Second, all in favor, aye.
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 Next minute approval is a special meeting minutes for February the 11th.
For the purposes of discussion, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of February 11th as presented.
I'll second that.
Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the last one is the Board of Selectmen regular meeting, February the 18th.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented,
Second.
February 18th.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have 2 items to be added to the opportunity to add adjustment, agenda items. One is the authorization of payments.
Make a motion that we approve the authorization of payments in the amount of, drum roll please,
$319,000.
$1,121.37.
$319,121.37.
Okay.
Right.
I'm sorry, I thought that's what I said, but maybe not.
Okay.
Tim?
So I'll second that.
Okay. Any additional discussion?
Uh,
All in favor?
I do have a couple of questions here. Brian, is Brian Wissinger still on?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm still here, Tim.
Yeah, I'd asked you a couple of questions that you were going to give me some information on.
Yep.
Uh,
The first one that you had asked me about was the Connecticut Mulch Distributors.
right.
That was for the rental of equipment to haul away mulch that we had on site that was catching on fire. And so our equipment was not equipped to be able to haul it away. So we had to rent larger equipment to take care of it.
Wow. So it's costing us $11,500 to haul away
Yes,
the
it
mulch?
did.
Wow.
Apparently it was a very big loader and a couple of pretty big trucks to haul it away.
Or we could have spent money to put the fire out on it too.
Okay.
Yep.
Good practice, though. Yeah. Okay, and what else did you come up with?
And then the other one was when, so you had asked me about one of the Shipman and Goodwin payments.
Right.
The total
that's
payment
on the second page
was
at the bottom.
$8,000. One of the invoices itself was for $7,603.50.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how much detail you want to go into. It's 3 pages long.
No, just what was it?
Time and hours.
I just want to know what it was for. What was the work they were doing?
A lot of it was services rendered through December 31st of 2020. It was for the review and markup draft of the GEI letter report. Quite a bit of follow-up, more work with GEI. An initial review of the draft developers agreement, correspondence with the town and Jay Stevenson regarding the draft, reviewing GEI's comments, reviewing the markup draft, preparing for calls, strategy regarding developer agreements.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Very good.
Only question I had, Brian, I'm hung up on the name Toyota Lease Trusts. I don't know of a lot of Toyotas that we have, but I'm sure that's just a financing agent, so I just wanted to be clear on what that's for.
Those are tax refunds, and unfortunately, because each individual one is an individual person, we have to send Toyota Lease Trust, 8 to 10 different checks. We can't just make it one check.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Yep.
Any additional comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I am signing this as we speak.
Thank you, Bud.
There you go, Mike. Sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
The other item is the letter from Ann Logan regarding a town-wide tag sale. I think the gentleman received this,
We did.
seeking
Yes.
approval to go forward with this hopefully annual event with the town of Summers.
Make a motion that we authorize as proposed the town-wide tag sale.
I second that.
Okay. Any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have one additional item I wanted to raise. This has to do with the committee that's being put together to review the CFO with regards to the appointment for another 2 years going forward. And I looked at the
Charter.
town charter,
Yeah.
and town charter refers to a member of a board of selectmen, a member of the finance committee, and the 2 of those individuals would choose the third party. And I'm recommending that the board of selectmen actually decide who that person should be, because my concern is that the current setup is you, Bud, would be that person, and Joe Talisano would be the board of finance person.
Right.
And you 2 of you have already decided who the third person is going to be. And my thinking is that the Board of Selectmen ought to be deciding who that person's going to be for the Selectmen, and the Board of Finance ought to be deciding who's going to be the representative for the Board of Finance. And if you want to table this, we can do that as well for another meeting.
Yeah, I think the approach we took was we tried to find somebody that had financial experience, and I thought Ham.
Then my point is that the selectman individual doesn't necessarily, in fact, because of the fact that you work so closely with Mike and have for years, is not really that objective a position that you have. And I'm just saying that you may not be the best person to be on this committee for the selectmen.
That's your opinion, Tim.
That's my opinion. Tim Patrikas might have some similar views. I haven't talked to him about it, but
Oh, we can table this and discuss it in further
Okay.
detail.
I haven't thought about it, but I'll go back when we did the charter revision. My recollection, and I have to go back in my notes because first I've heard of this, but I have to go back in my notes. But I thought that we specifically separated first selectmen and board of selectmen. So
no, I think it says selectmen.
I know, but I think you and I, Tim, are elected to the board of selectmen. Bud is elected as first, but I don't know if technically he's.
I don't have the language in front of me.
Might be in there. I don't know. I'd have
Historically,
to look.
perhaps you can give us some insight here, Mike. Historically, we've always kind of followed this procedure, but what you're recommending is that you have a vote in terms of that third person.
But I don't know if you should be even eligible for the board, but that's for the.
Well, I don't know either.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's more appropriate for either Tim or me to be the board member, and that the Board of Finance should decide who their person's going to be. And if Tim Patrikas would like to do it, I'm fine with that. But we can table this for now and discuss it at our next meeting.
I already hung myself on the IT thing, brother. You're going to have to take one of these.
You're right.
We'll discuss it at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay?
Very good.
I do have one item to add as well, if we're done with that one.
Yeah.
We had received an email from Ann Logan on February 19th with a suggested policy regarding the Freedom of Information posting requirements for boards, commissions, and committees. I'd like to see if we can get that on the agenda for our March 18 meeting for official consideration.
Okay. Will do.
What's the date of the 2 weeks from now?
2 weeks from now.
I think it's the 18th. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I think it's a worthwhile discussion on a policy, and I'm still a little unclear on where the actual policies live and breathe in the building, but it's worth reviewing this one that Ann sent forward so that we're in compliance with FOI.
Okay. Any additional items, gentlemen? Make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Thank you for your involvement.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
Take care.